All right, I think we're good to go.
Cool, man.
So yeah, give us some insight into the enhanced games. Like, you were there commentating, saw things like behind the scenes. So like, yeah, what were your takes? What were your thoughts on the whole thing?
Like, I think there's kind of this question, there's a lot floating around out, in the world now about what it was, how it is, how it went. I think it just depends how granularly you look at it. So the good, bad, ugly of anything is going to depend on what level you're looking at. If you're 30,000 foot view, was it a success? Like, yeah, they ran an event. The event had one record. Um, Largely, there was no catastrophic failures. Like no one got seriously injured. There was no crazy stuff happening that caused, mega problems. As
Hmm.
you get closer, down to the sort of view from the floor. Yeah, I mean, I would say I can comment on the weightlifting a bit because that was what I'm most familiar with. There was a lot of just I would call it organizational issues is the wrong word, just organizational choices that were made based on the situation they had that put them in a spot where, you've got nine lifters, you've got three sessions essentially. Each session is three people, which gives you a really short amount of time to do anything. That was probably a decision made most likely for broadcasting and promotional reasons, right? You need to get things in a short time. No one's going to watch a 4 minute segment of, everything going on. So they wanted to keep everything short. The sort of downside to that setup in my mind is that you end up with, just a lot of weird scenarios. If somebody drops out, if somebody gets hurt, like what happens to the competition? And I think they did the best they could with what they had in the moment. So that's like a level there. The other
Hmm.
side of this is philosophically, the question you have to ask is is this a good thing, a bad thing? Um, I don't know where I sit with all that yet. Like, I'm not totally sure on any of that. Um, it's this question of it's a question of you can mock them for not breaking every record in existence, right? Why didn't everybody break records?
Hmm.
And there's definitely many reasons for that. The age of the athletes, the talent of the athletes, the time they had to train, all these things.
Hmm.
Um, but was it as big a failure as say 50 plus weightlifters failing drug tests 8 years after they got tested at the Olympics? So it's like weird balance, right? Like what's good, what's bad. I'm not sure where I sit with all that, yet. Like exactly what was amazing or not. The whole event, in my opinion, went on really well. Like they ran the thing well. It was seamless. There was hiccups, but they did a great job with that. The broadcasting was really well. Again, there's details that probably need to get ironed out, but for the
Hmm.
most part, that stuff went pretty well.
Hmm. So yeah, you were kind of speaking on this, like Arlie Mendez had to like pull out, so they only had two people in that session. Like, how do they manage that? Like, was it a typical like 1 minute clock, or do they had just have like as much time as they needed or wanted in between
So I mean,
lifts?
you got to imagine, right? The way the thing was run by the Bergners. Bergners have done enormous stuff for weightlifting, and they've really been at the forefront of pushing weightlifting into other spaces.
Hmm.
They are super experienced. So I think, we kind of talked about this all before in the broadcast meeting, but what's going to happen if somebody gets hurt or somebody pulls out? And from the broadcasting side, it's like, well, we just have to fill that time, right? So if there's a minute of nothing happening, we have to fill it. They decided that regardless of what happens, they would still give a minute clock. So, three guys lift, everyone gets a minute and starts over. Same as round robin, like powerlifting.
Hmm.
Um, so if it was just Wes, which would happen at the end of the thing, it was just Wes, like the only one doing clean and jerks. Um, and so Bodie, I think that's why Bodie went out and did clean and press, just to do something in that time.
Right.
The story was that he was hurt, so I think he just couldn't do a big clean and jerk. Um, and so they had to fill time that way. Again, one of the downsides to that choice of competition, it's just way too precarious. Three guys, with a round robin system. So
Hmm.
Arlie hurt. The story I heard is Arlie was hurt pretty early, like a week or so out, and kind of knew it, and it was unfortunate. So he kind of did what he could. When he got time to lift, he just couldn't do it. His hand was hurt, his thumb.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so that was a bummer there. But yeah, they just tried to fill stuff in. I mean, they tried to like you're on the fly. The fourth attempt snatches, I didn't understand. I don't know where that came from. No one had told us about that. So that
Okay.
was a little like to criticize a little bit. It just throws like it feels like somebody other than the director of the meet was in control. Where like
Right.
I wouldn't let fourth attempts happen at a local meet, and it won't happen at a national meet. So like
Hmm.
it kind of just got a little sloppy, in my opinion.
Hmm. And can you speak on the coaching that was happening, like at that meet? Because I saw Bodie's dad was like coaching him, but you were saying the Bergeners were there. Like, what was going on with
Well,
that?
Bergner's are running the event.
Okay.
The team, everyone kind of had their own coach, or reality. From what I understand, the reality was a lot of them just had no coaches because they'd been retired for so long. So many of those athletes were like 10 years out of the sport. So they
Hmm.
didn't have any coaches. There was Ivan Rojas was there, I guess, in that role, kind of as a proxy, coaching them, as a group. Um, to what degree, he was familiar with them and how long he had with them, that probably has an effect on things.
Hmm.
Um, but like the reality was, I think a lot of people were told if you coach athletes, I was told by a USAW employee, if you coach athletes at the events, you'll be banned. And if
Oh
you lift
shit.
at the event, you'll be banned. So, I imagine that probably kept a lot of people quiet, and they probably won't ever come out and say if they were helping anyone or not, because, you know,
Right.
the governing bodies are pretty vindictive.
Hmm. Were you issued any kind of warning like that because you are associated with like the USAW or anything?
No,
No.
I actually
Okay.
specifically asked the same guy. I said, I'm just commentating. Is that going to get me banned? And he said, no, not if you just commentate.
Okay.
So I was on the media side. I didn't have it. You
Nice.
know, it's a, yeah, it's an interesting question, right? It's like, you know, it's like you're banning people for participating and associating with people who've done this. And I think that rule in spirit, the point of that rule is to prevent a say corrupt coach who's been doping people from still having influence in a team, right? Let's say you have a team in some weightliftistan, and a guy gets popped as a coach, and then hey, he's banned. Other people could theoretically work with him but not acknowledge it. But if they catch you, they can say, hey, you're associating, like you're going to get banned too. And basically the goal is to push them out of the organization.
Hmm.
um that's the spirit of it, but the reality is like like you know if you participate in an event where other people are knowingly doing drugs, does that mean that you're going to get banned?
Hmm.
Like, what is the extent of it? Where does it stop? Because like let's say Madison Pinnell, right? Dylan's girlfriend,
Right.
um, or I think fiance now, but like his girlfriend, does she get banned because she associates with him, right?
Hmm.
Like, and that's happened before. You had Norik Vardanyan and Jenny Arthur. They weren't married at the time. He was banned, and she went to the Olympics. So it's like this weirdness of where does the rule stop? Where are the borders of it? And if
Hmm.
it is like association with the intent to procure advice or whatever from somebody,
Hmm.
then you know theoretically someone could have lifted there and been clean and been fine.
Right.
um yeah, it's a weird thing. I don't know.
And why was it only like USAW? Because there were some runners and there were some swimmers who competed who were, theoretically clean, right?
I think track and field had the same stance as USAW. I just believe swimming did not. And the
Okay.
guy who was clean in swimming, I can't remember his name, he apparently they were in contact with Tiger, with the head of USADA the whole
Hmm.
time. And he was getting regularly tested by USADA during the entire process. So they just, swimming was more amenable to it and said, yeah, as long as he passes tests and he gets whereabouts and all that, it's fine.
Hmm. Right. Because like you even mentioned like if Olivia Reeves had like competed, she could have got a huge paycheck and probably
Yeah.
made more than her whole natural career. Well, she's still natural, but she made a big paycheck.
I think, Olivia, let's assume she could do the world records.
Hmm.
If she went there and done two world records,
I mean,
and got
so I think she could
whatever, been
too.
like 500K plus whatever the stipend is, which is probably like, my guess would be close to, you know, 75 to 150,000.
Hmm.
Um, that's for 1 year. Maybe she does
Okay.
it 2, 3 years in a row. I mean, she could walk away with maybe $2 million if the thing goes on for 4 years.
Right.
Um, so it's this question of like, yeah, if she's passing drug tests and she's in USADA's testing pool, like why would you fight to stop her from making that kind of money if she wanted to? I have no idea what she wants.
Hmm.
Um, and at the same time, you know, having USADA there would almost be the better weapon to say, look, you don't even need to use drugs to win.
Hmm.
Like here's this girl going to the untested federation and beating everybody while still passing the exact same USADA protocol testing that she does now. Um, Again, there's a lot to be said. I think there's probably layers to what's going on. This is a company. It's obviously a company. It's a for-profit company. It is
Hmm.
not a sports federation like weightlifting or power swimming.
Hmm.
So, these people are there to make a profit. And so there'll be decisions made to promote certain products. If they're promoting, if they're promoting the use of illegal substances, like taking banned substances to cheat in sport, for sure, that's against the rules.
Hmm.
That seems like it's pretty straightforward. If Olivia Reeves was not let's not take Olivia. If somebody else was competing, not competing at the event, and they
Yeah.
work for this company, do they get banned as well? Like if they're a sales rep or if they're that's their profession, right? It's like this
Hmm.
weird space around this. It's just like it doesn't feel definitive, right? It feels like it's against like competing there on drugs would obviously be against the rules. Competing there not on drugs, work in the swimming case, but not in weightlifting.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know where the boundaries are. This all in my mind, I say all this because it kind of factors into like what is the reality of this thing? It's gonna probably go on again for years to come. It could become a larger portion of what exists, It could become a bigger sort of part of both of all these sports because the amount of money they're offering is crazy. USAW will never get somebody $600,000. It's never going to
Yeah.
happen. And
Right.
if they did, it would be a sponsorship deal that really is like outside of USA weightlifting,
Hmm.
right? It's not like the federation has that much money to pay one person. So, yeah.
Is that how much money they were making? Like, or is that just under the assumption that they break these world records? Because what is it, 250 for
Two,
per record?
and
Yeah.
then you get the yearly contract. That's as some of the numbers I heard were 150K a year.
Okay. And even though it's done now, there's still going to get paid out for the rest of the year. And do they
Well,
have
they're
any
getting,
other obligations?
I imagine
Sorry.
they get paid a monthly stipend.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, like what's next for some of these athletes who just competed? Like, are they ramping up for next year? Or, like they're just chilling? Like,
I would assume so. I know some people have multi-year contracts, so I assume they'll do it again. You have to imagine too, right? Put this in perspective, right?
mm-hmm.
So this whole event cost $50 million to put on, right? They said 25 was basically the event itself, and then another 25 was money for prize, athlete support, and medical stuff. That seems like a crazy amount of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a guy who came to our gym. We're in the Bay Area, and he told us about a company that he works for that was going to lay off a bunch of workforce, and they put a big party on. Instead, they put on a party, and that party cost $50 million. So you have to put in perspective, like $50 million isn't that much money, especially when you're talking about like investors that have billions of dollars. Like if you have multiple billions of dollars, potentially to tap into, like look at this from the side of a tech structure. It's like put out a product that's not great in the beginning, find out what was wrong with it and fix those things, and then refine that and do it again. If they apply that model to this in 5 years, this will be really, really good for sure. They'll just keep refining the problems. They'll have younger athletes that are closer to their talent, people that just retired. Like they'll eventually get the best talent. They'll eventually get the best people because the money will be so great that it wouldn't. It'll also do this thing of attracting people that'll cheat. For sure it will.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like you can't take illicit drugs that are not FDA approved. Somebody will figure out how to do it. They're doing it in the
Right.
Olympic Games. Why wouldn't they do
Hmm.
it for like 10 million bucks, you know? So I
Yeah.
think that's the reality of what's going to happen if they decide it's worth money.
Okay. So right now they're under like obligations for what protocol they can and cannot take in the enhanced games.
That's
Okay.
what I was told. It's FDA approved medication. They said they
Mm,
can only take FDA approved medication, which I don't know what that includes. I think they were showing that they were taking like testosterone, um, some peptides. I believe EPO was on that list and growth hormone. But like oxandrolone or Anavar is an FDA medication. Oxymetholone is an FDA medication, which is Anadrol, which is incredibly strong.
okay. Yeah.
Um, there's a bunch of really strong drugs that could be used. It's also like what is the medical thing? They didn't really give a clear like medical health. What does that mean, right?
Hmm.
Um, is it unhealthy to have elevated, super physiological levels of testosterone for 12 weeks?
Right.
Like where does the line go? So I kind of don't know exactly what that looks like as far as like what they're taking.
Hmm. So is there a world where this continues, like the enhanced games continues, like next few years, and then some of these weightlifters who are barely being paid as is just transfer over here and like take a shot at the world records and like maybe not even go on any sort of crazy protocol.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally possible. I think it's like I think there's a lot. To me, this is the problem with drug testing, right? Is like no amount of past drug tests will ever convince somebody that you're not on drugs if they already believe it. The fact that people they'll accuse like Olivia Reeves of being on drugs, like Gabriel
Hmm.
Sinclair, like he got popped, and then he accuses Olivia of drugs, right? Which
Yeah.
is doesn't matter how many tests she passed. She could pass a million tests, a
Hmm.
million, and he won't care. He just will not let go of that idea.
Yeah.
So no amount of past tests can prove that. The only way you could prove it is to go on drugs and lift more than you did. Be like, look,
Right.
I'm 20 or 30% stronger. Like clearly I was not dirty back then. In my
Hmm.
opinion, that would be the only way you could get some semblance of proof.
Yeah.
Um, or just ignore them, obviously. But the problem is like if that's the case, then you know, the potentially offers an outlet for that for some people that might feel slighted. I also think it's the kind of thing where if it allows people to extend their career beyond this, beyond the current state of lifting, like I would see that become a more popular thing.
Hmm.
Um, will a lot of people get drawn to it? I don't know. I mean, money has a way of really motivating people. So if you could win $1 million in weightlifting to break the world record, like that's a lot more than you're going to get for winning the world championships.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's wild. Mm. So Dylan Cooper was there. What were your thoughts on that? Was that just kind of like a media stunt, try to get some more eyes on the sport, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think there's like I don't think these people they have so much money they don't need to do stunts. Like I don't think there's like media stunts. I don't think there's a lot of people that just say these kind of idea like flashy ideas like it's a stunt. It's like well like everything's a stunt. Like
Hmm.
like Coca-Cola putting their product in front of on a Super Bowl ad is a stunt. It's like I think they brought in the people they could. The things I heard were largely they were limited on the amount of time they had to get people, which created problems for acquiring work permits. Right, these people are being paid by a U.S. company. Right,
Hmm.
I believe it's a U.S. based company. They're being paid to do work in the United States. They needed to have work permits for it to be legal. So there was a lot of restrictions and problems in that situation. That's why I was told it was hard to get people like a Synchrane or a Plesnoy. It was just, I even presented, they asked me a few months before if I knew anyone to reach out to. And I suggested, why don't you go to like Russia or Ukraine or something? They said, we can't because we won't be able to get any work permits.
Hmm.
So the reality there is not so much that they probably chose not to get those people. The vibe I got from them as well was they don't give a shit who's there. Like they don't care who it is. They
Hmm.
want break the number, like pick the best person. They were limited by the realities of could they get this person to actually come here legally and do this stuff.
Hmm.
So I think for sure next year, my guess would be they'd probably try and get those guys. Dylan Cooper, I think he was already using drugs and he's already in that space.
Mhm.
He's popular, and he was game for it, and he came on late into it. I think he came on a few months after I had spoken to them, and like he did his lifting, and I think he's popular. So it's like, why wouldn't you want that?
Right.
You know,
Mhm. Is there
yeah.
someone that you'd like to see at the next games?
I mean, it's a funny question, right? Like, I would more than any one person, what I'd love to see is them change the format. I think they
Mhm.
need to in a way where it's you pay for both the world records and then you pay on total as well based on who's closest to the world record total by percentage, right?
Mhm.
And they should pay people out like a race. You have 10 athletes, they pay from first to last based on how close in proximity to the world record you are. And that would allow them, to have an event where people are winning money at it,
Mhm.
even if they're getting third, fourth, fifth place, and they're putting up great numbers. Beatrice Puron did really well. She did a 118 clean and jerk. She did super big numbers.
Mhm.
Didn't make the record snatch. Walks away with no real payday. Whereas, you know, her proximity to the world record would have been, she'd probably be last place because she bombed, but like that clean and jerk would at least be closer to that than maybe someone who bombs the clean and jerk, right? So it
Mhm.
would at least give you some sense of like, one, every lift is consequential and it's a battle because like everybody's fighting everybody else to get as high on that ranking as they can, and at the same time, there's an actual payday at the end of it for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as seeing any one person in that, I think it's like, you know, um, pull any of the Russian B team or any A team that's been sitting in the wings waiting to do something.
Right.
Just get me half of the. Tell Russia about this. Make a pipeline to get them in, and you'll see giant records broken. Right?
Yeah.
They'll figure out a way past the testing. They'll do whatever the fuck they feel like doing.
Yeah.
Um, and they'll come in and they'll do whatever, or not, or they'll come and do it the way they want, and they'll play by the rules they have, and they'll lift big numbers. I think
Right.
it's. I think if we'd have seen this in like 2016,
Mhm.
it might have been crazy. Like we might have seen some crazy numbers. But the reality is, again, a lot of what those guys were taking probably would also, eliminate them from the rules they've set up. There's
Mhm.
an irony to it. It's not even like unregulated testing. Like it's not even like take whatever you want. You know,
Mhm.
it's like take a certain amount of pharmaceutical aids.
Right.
Where we're not talking about like 1988, where it's like drug testers are looking the other way. Like no one's even getting tested. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, it's too bad about Plesnoy. I feel like that would have been entertaining. I feel like he would have had a good shot. Probably would have
yeah.
broken something.
I
Yeah.
think for sure he could have broken a record. I think Wes with a little more training. I think if Wes can stay healthy for another year and train,
Yeah.
maybe like 5 more months or something, he could do the record. I think he
Yeah.
has the physical tools. He just needs a lot more, structure and sort of putting himself in that place. I think if Arlie Mendez wasn't hurt, he would have done the snatch record.
Hmm.
Um, Brody looks physically capable of it, but just can't make the lifts.
Hmm.
Um, even though he had 3 tries. So I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I feel like to your point, if people thought Wes was on something before, I feel like this proves that he wasn't, just because the augmentation that he had, like he's just visibly so much different.
yeah. He was so thick when I saw him. When I first walked in and saw him sitting down, I was like, he looked like 20 kilos bigger than he ever looked before. And he was a big dude. But you
Hmm.
watch the videos of him back then, like it's a great point, right? It's like, look, he could definitely argue like I was not trying 190 plus snatches
Hmm.
before,
Right.
and I was in the USADA pool. Here I am, clearly explaining I'm taking this stuff, and look at me. He's like totally different,
Hmm.
totally different. I think it is in my opinion, it probably is the best evidence to show that he probably was clean before,
Yeah,
outside of
100%.
the drug tests that proved
Hmm.
that sure he was.
Yeah. I feel like Kanish Rusami is like in that conversation too, where he's kind of like at the end of his career, or he's like been at the end, and it'd just be hilarious to see him go to these games.
Yeah, Rostami's a funny one, man. He is a one of a kind person for sure.
Hmm.
It seems like it'd be perfectly set up for him. Um, I'm kind of I don't even know though. I feel like he might try some wild political thing. It's Rasami. He's like Rasami is like the Kanye West of weightlifting.
Yeah,
My like that's like the best way. That's what he is. He's just out there, man. But he's
100%.
I mean, he's really good.
Hmm. Do you think this is, I mean, a bit of a loaded question. Do you think this is good or bad for like the clean, Olympic Games?
That's a tough question to answer, right? It's like like the Olympic Games is a filthy organization in certain ways, right? You have, I mean, we've shown it time and time again, just so many positive tests.
Hmm.
Um, Yet here everyone is still fired up about it. I think it's generationally, my generation and older what is like staunchly against the drug side. They're like,
Hmm.
wrong, you're a terrible person, yada yada, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of people in that camp. It feels like the younger generation, like very young people coming into this, just don't give a shit. They just don't care. Like they've kind of grown up on this reality of everyone kind of uncovering, like pulling the wool from their eyes and be like, yeah, all these countries are dirty. Like people are doing stuff, they're cheating, they're bad. Like there's all corruption everywhere. Like they just kind of understand the world as like, well, that's just how it is, right? And so
Hmm.
they're like, but at the same time, they're like, well, I don't have any interest in doing that. So
Hmm.
they don't walk this line of like it's not even a moral question. They're just like I'm not interested. If you look at like untested powerlifting in the US, it doesn't even seem like it's not even like on their mind like an ethical question. It's just like, well, I don't want to do that. Like I'm not gonna do that. I'm specifically competing in this for this way, and that's just like I've answered that question. It's over.
Hmm.
Where it's kind of this thing of like before years back, I think it was a bigger thing of like, well, it's against the rules and it's a shady thing, and like no one really talks about it, but you kind of whisper about it. Um,
Hmm.
as far as it being good or bad for the current state of the current weightlifting, I think I can't answer that. Like I have opinions both ways. Like I think the argument for it being bad is pretty easy to make. Is that it just like it sets up a precedence of like sort of bad behavior that like yeah hey you can just do this and like you don't need to train or do these things you can come over and do whatever um and that might have a negative connotation to people. On the other side, the positive is like USAW is not putting up a $250,000 for what IWF doesn't put up money for world records. um
Hmm.
and so it's this question of like I don't know, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? I think we all always talked about this, right? We all talked about this for decades. Was if we get an Olympic champion, then the sport's going to get big. If we get
Hmm.
someone that's popular and wins, we get everything. And to do that, we need to offer money. And then it all comes around, and here it is. Somebody's like, "I'll give you guys $500,000 to break the world records," and it's like suddenly, not it's not exactly the way we expected. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I'm still wrestling with whether or not it's good or bad. I don't know
Hmm.
in my mind. Yeah, I'm sort of trying to figure that out.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's all the questions I have for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Really appreciate
All
you
good.
taking this time to chat about it. I know a lot of people are kind of like, talking about it and still kind of confused about, what just happened. And, I'm glad
Yeah.
you were able to shed some light on the situation and a lot of good insight.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, I think if anything, it's like at least it's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, for sure. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Max. We'll be in touch.
Yeah. Of course, man.
All right.
Awesome.
Enjoy your day. See you later.